So now we're at the time to turn this from 3 presentations into a discussion and to hear questions from all of you. So this panel will be moderated by my colleague, Dan Churchwell, who serves as Acton Institute's Director of Programs and Education. Dan?
Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to be with you. My first time in Rome. What a beautiful city. Thank you for being great hosts to us. It's my job today to take about 30 minutes and moderate a panel discussion on what you've just heard. I'm going to ask 3 very brief questions, one for each of the panelists, and then we will have time for your questions. There will be 2 gentlemen with microphones, and I will point to you, and they will bring a microphone to you so you can, so we can gather it for the recording so we can hear you. And please, as a reminder, keep your questions brief. Make sure they are questions so that we can get through as many questions as possible in the half an hour that we have. So my first question, and I'll just go from my left. Etienne, 6 months ago, you're not only a serial entrepreneur in the business sense, you're an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur as well. And you helped create a nonprofit initiative that Acton and several other organizations have partnered with called Rerum Novarum. And today is the release of the first white paper. What was the impetus behind that growth?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for Acton for being a partner on the baptism of this initiative. When Leo XIV actually became elected on the 3rd day, he would speak about AI. And the vision here is that no one knows truly what work will become in the future. So as Christians, we have to say something about that. If those remain silent, the stones will cry out, as St. Luke says. So if we as Christian business leaders and entrepreneurs join together, share together the best practice, and discern together under the compass of the Catholic social thought, then maybe we will help advance a new world with dignified human work at AI time. So the whole vision of this nonprofit initiative is to gather a lot of testimonials and set a sort of companionship with all kinds of people from all over the world. So you're very welcome to upload with a QR code. You will get the white paper that we released today. And we have 15 examples from all around the world, from Argentina to Japan, through United States, Africa, Europe, of people trying to serve without enslaving, trying to make a purposeful use of AI. And we're welcoming any testimonials, because as Paul VI says, our era requires masters, but masters who are first testimonies. So we believe that we need to share testimonies and then help people discern together and bring some signs of hope in this algorithmic world. Thank you.
Thank you. Louis, what a fascinating thesis that your group worked on a month or so ago with the idea of what will be the last human job. And as I was listening, did the group of 20 or so that you had consider AI for elder care as the last best hope? Or were there other solutions considered to solve this problem outside of the digital or technical solution?
Obviously, elder care or hospice are extreme situations, so it was helpful as an exercise to sort of draw out some of the principles. Is digital technology the last frontier, kind of? I think our consensus was we hope not, but there are some practical issues. I would maybe turn the question around based on a discussion that some of us had earlier this morning, which is, we can spend a lot of time debating, is AI human or not? Can it take the place of a human in situations like elder care? Because we're concerned about it won't replicate the quality of a real human interaction. So I'll kind of turn the question around and just remind people, our human-to-human interactions aren't perfect. There's a lot of moral formation we consistently need. We're sinful creatures, just to make our human-to-human interactions great. Then, when we get to the issue of AI, maybe we can be a little bit more prudential about where that AI technology can be appropriate. But I would argue that that's not the most important issue right now.
Good, thank you. Karl, you've done extensive work in your different AI startups and companies. I was reminded listening to you that John Maynard Keynes in 1930 wrote a very short but creative essay called The Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren. And in that, in 1930, he argued that, in essence, that in 100 years, so roughly now, we would be having a 3-hour work week, or excuse me, a 3-hour work day, or maybe a 15-hour work week, somewhere in there, due to technological innovation that would bring more wealth and therefore more free time. And so I'm wondering, as you think about that, it hasn't happened. The technology has just allowed us to work more. We, especially in the Western world, we tend, technology doesn't allow us to have more freedom. It makes us work longer hours. And I'm just wondering, as you think through some of these ideas, your divide about scaling the lazy, you know, that dichotomy that you kind of set out for us, have you thought that maybe we will just work more with AI? It actually won't make us more efficient. Our bosses, if you will just put more work on us, or more work will be demanded of us. Have you thought of that angle?
Yes, I have. It's a good question. I think that the challenge is that you're never making a choice alone. You're making the choice for your life together with so many other people from your own country and from other countries that you might be competing with. And so suppose I take the increased efficiency and decide to have more free time with it, but my colleague or the other person who's applying for the job is still willing to work 8 hours or 15 hours a day. It's that competitive marketplace that makes that challenging. So I think that's part of the reason why we haven't made that choice to date. And I worry that we won't be able to make that choice again in the future for the same reasons. Like I was talking about, I think that I am working, partly it's a startup, but also just AI, I can have several agents, 10 agents working at the same time. I'm working faster. It doesn't feel easy to choose to slow down. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Where are my mic holders? Do we have mics?
He's got one there, I think.
Where does it? Okay, here. Anyone, I will point you out, please, by a raise of hands. And again, keep your question short and to the point for us. I see this gentleman's hand here on the end. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Rocquigny. I'm from the house, from the Gregorian University. So I very much want to take the opportunity to ask this. Forse adesso? Chiedo scusa. Ok, grazie. I'd like to take the occasion to ask 2 questions, very short. The first one, since we are in a university and you are very much involved in the transformations associated with the progress, the lightning progress of AI, what do you envisage as the pedagogical, educational consequences of AI? Which for me is truly, not because I'm afraid of losing my job, but because I love the future. I have great hopes for the future, and I want to take good care of the future generations. So this is my first question. The second one would be, if the Holy Father, and probably you will, I mean, I know nothing, believe me, if the Holy Father were to publish an encyclical with a title like Laborans Exercens, as St. John Paul II did, what would be your key suggestion to the writer, I mean, to the Holy Father, in dealing with such an issue? Thank you.
So 2 very simple questions. Was that to anyone in particular, or just for the? So who would like to take that?
I can start. I mean, it's such a good question. Maybe several of us could try to answer it. But in terms of education, I think that, as I mentioned, AI strength is it can be a very personalized tutor. And so it can, I'll just talk about myself learning coding. It can help me just take the very next step and not be overwhelmed by having to learn a whole bunch of things. Just, I'm trying to do this, I'm struggling, and gives me just what I need at that moment. So it can be that personal tutor. My wife's doing that with language right now. And so I think that would be one thing, is using it as a tutor, but not replacing the human. I talk about coding with my coworkers who are coders, and I get the human interaction that I need there from that. So I think it's that human leading with the AI as a tutor, stepping them along. That would be one point. Second, on education, I think you would want to get your students using it, trying it out, learning, just working with it. And in terms of the encyclical, I said this to the folks this morning, I think we need to draw some more firm lines. One of the ones that I'm most passionate about is that AI is not a person, and we should not refer to it as a person. So we should draw just a very bright line saying it's an it. We call it an it. We don't say even you or I to it. It's it, always it. We don't have a relationship with it. We don't treat it like a person. We don't have romantic sexual relations with it. It's just a person. So, I mean, it's just a not person. It's just not a person.
Maybe on education, I would like to have a comment. Of course, there are immense potential with AI, particularly in places very poor in terms of education, because it's lowering the cost to access to an incredible amount of education material. So there are many promises. I would keep an eye on the very critical question of critical think. And as I've been teaching applied maths for a long time, and one of the key things to understand really a model is understand where the model fails. Unless you've understood where the model fails, you've not understood the model. And there is the very important return to reality, because a model is always, a simplification of reality. And in an era with a lot of AI-enhanced education, which has a lot of promise, we need to find a way to keep people the feet on earth, getting a physical experience of what's happening in the world. Because unless you get a physical experience of what's happening with the world, you're not really learning. So there is that interesting thing to how to reinvent education and actually let people work more with their hands to get the central experience, and also to get return on reality. Because of course a very big failure with AI powered education would be to live only in a virtual world which has no any form of link to the present world. So I think we have to reimagine ways into which we actually take more care of manual work and of going back to the field. Also thanks to AI, which will make it more efficient for other kind of duties. So I would think that's very important to survive and keep developing critical think and access to reality. And by the way, we have a real presence in the church, so real presence is important, of course. Now, the other thing on laboren accessens, so facilitens, non so. I would think there's a sort of earth divide today with respect to AI, and that's very strong on the study we did with Rerum Novarum. You kind of have the modern, the northern hemisphere, modern world, which is has a high anxiety about losing their job, whereas in places like Africa, there's a promise of incredible source of wealth for the basic needs, like getting to health, getting to food, accessible food, and all those kind of things. And I think there's a lot of work to do in order to make those promises accessible to those. And that's calling for an immense development of companies to actually permit those people to access to that level of wealth. And I would think that this will be a creation of jobs much higher to the destruction. And again, I think Malthus 150 years ago said that what we will do with people losing their job because of agricultural efficiency, and we have to curb fertility rates because there's no way people will get a job. And I think we are tempted to raise the same fallacy today, and I think we should urge on building companies and getting new jobs to help solve the real pains of our planet with that incredible source of efficiency with AI.
Thank you.
Real quick, I would just add two things. One is whatever church documents there are, there is a risk of, at a minimum, being a little bit, I guess, fuzzy on what we're talking about with AI. There are a lot of discussions and concerns, and it's like talking about a shadow. We're not really clear what's causing the shadow. So is it a chatbot? Is it being connected to nuclear weapons? So I think that, at a minimum, we should be a little bit tighter in our language. And then the second thing, I want to bring up something that in our small discussion this morning, someone named Boson, I don't know if he's in the room, brought up, which is we talk a lot about the scary parts of AI, but when we talk about some of the great accelerations and aid that AI provides, it will result, we're going to see potentially even greater inequity and inequality between developed and developing regions. And that will be a source of social instability, so we have to be attentive to that also.
Nick, is there a question on this side?
We have one here then.
Oh, here. Thank you.
Buongiorno, sono Tamila, sono ucraina. Una breve e grave domanda. Intelligenza emotiva è importante per crescere e sviluppare intelligenza artificiale? Grazie.
Towers, please translate.
Yeah, so is the emotional intelligence, what's the role of emotional intelligence for the in artificial intelligence in your view?
I think there's a temptation always with AI, there's this temptation to say, now, that is human and that is AI, and full stop. So it started with some people talking about emotion, say emotion are just human. And then people move into creativity. Creativity is just human and AI is not. And there's always a difficulty here because many of what we think would be the uniqueness of the human being may not be such so. And if we talk about emotions in terms of very instantaneous reaction of the brain to a number of aggression on outside, well, for many, let's say, 100 millions of years, life has developed emotions in the animals as a way to react efficiently to aggressions. So I would not say that emotion in a restricted sense would be really that unique difference and sort of compensating AI. It's somehow more subtle. And in my view, the most important thing also with a Pope who is Augustinian is at the end of the day, I would say that the final thing that differs us from the machine is will, or free will, or is the fact that we are, at the end of the day, in the image of God, making decision. God created freely us to be free creatures. So I would invest more the question of free will and the question of educating people to actually increase their sense of freedom and the capacity to act freely as moral agents, rather than, of course, emotion is a subject, but I would say that it's more important to think about freedom than just emotion with respect to AI.
Yes, here, please.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Andrzej Sokówka, a layman and a member of Centesimus Annus Pro Pontifice Foundation. I wanted to ask a question about defining the values when using the AI. One of the areas which I think bridges the technology and Catholic Church is science. Historically, it was Catholic Church, it was monasteries that were kind of rooting and cultivating the scientific knowledge that arguably where the Western civilization we are at now. So I think we as a church have a foundational role in this technological shift. We see it, for example, in science, in discovery, in new medical, new medicines, etc. But at the same time, the users and developers of the technologies are not all sharing the same ethical values and principles rooted in the Catholic Church. There are many religious and non-religious groups. So how would you go around, how are you thinking as entrepreneurs going about setting up and understanding this universal values when developing and thinking about ways of applying the technology? What's your view on these ethical frameworks for using the technology? Thank you.
When you're thinking about that with AI, you have to think about it at two levels: the foundational models themselves, and then all of the applications and tools that layer on top of them. So foundational models being what ChatGPT, OpenAI is making, or Anthropic, or Google Gemini, and the like. And those are being trained on huge sets of data and then being reinforced trained and getting all sorts of things baked into them, which then can be broadly used. And when they are baking all of that into them and training them, part of it is just how to use language well and all of the skills that it's gaining. But they are training values into it as they train it. Like a funny one is to be very obsequious and you know, we've all probably joked around with that. It's too flattering of you as it talks to you. That's a value that they trained in and are now kind of training out to be lesser. But that's a moral judgment and a value for how it should relate to the human. And I'm not in those companies and I'm not doing that work, so this is very much third-hand knowledge. But I know that they are thinking about those questions. They have a set of values, like Anthropic's very explicit about. We're trying to train these kinds of values, and they look at the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They train it on that. They publish what they've trained it on. I forget what some of the other ones are. And I know that many of those companies are coming to the Vatican to talk about that very question. So that's one whole side. And I'm not expert there, but I know they're thinking about it. And I think more needs to be done. Then the second layer is like my own company. I'm just using those models to do stuff. And in that sense, it's like any other tool. You call it and you can do things with it. But you want to design the use of your own tool to make sure that it's helping people as best as possible, serving people. And there's small little choices you can make in just providing a good software application. But that's like smaller prudential judgment as you're working. So those are the two levels.
I think there's a lot to learn on how the Catholic Church has influenced society over centuries. Catholic social teaching, I think, is a great example. In Catholic hospitals in the US, they have ERDs, ethical and religious directives, and that can address sort of the first layer of at least Catholics. And then beyond that, the more secular society, you know, how do you influence that? And I think at the very least, there's a chance to influence the vocabulary that maybe can be amenable to people even who aren't religious, sanctity of life, even if you disagree with what that means. And you have seen in history that there are cultural influences that have created bright lines or hard boundaries, like cloning. You know, just internationally, cloning is just not allowed. So I think one of the things we talked about this morning is while we debate what is AI and the harms, whatever, there is another discussion on just studying how Catholic Church has changed society and what lessons can we learn.
I'm Anthony Christie. from India. And I don't have a question, actually. I would say this is a kind of an observation, or you could say even a preoccupation. None of us here in the hall is an AI generation. All of us are trying to get into that AI generation. An AI generation typically right now is not more than 10-year-old. And therefore, all the resource persons here are very much into it. But now, every time we talk about AI, we always talk about it with a caution. All of you, also when you spoke, you were talking about the balance that we need to arrive at, and talking about not being the last thing that is AI and things like that. But I'm just thinking the preoccupation is another 30, 40 years from now, there would be a generation that is typically AI generation, and where would be human element in that? Will they still have the same caution when they talk about, when they speak about, when they are dealing with progress with AI? And I am forced to imagine, maybe 100 years from now, there will be a hall like this, who will be talking about how do we put back human element into humanity.
Thank you.
If you have time, Google church documents on the internet published between 1990 and 2000. It's kind of interesting. What they thought were harms and what ended up happening. It's quite simplistic. I think, again, one of the things we talked about this morning in Antiqua et Nova, the document on AI from the Vatican that was published in February, there's a line that says, one thing that's for certain and perennial is sin. And technologies will come and change. There will be other things that we'll worry about, but they're just opportunities to either amplify grace or sin. So I would say the thing that we need to focus on is continual moral formation.
Yeah, the parallel that I would give is my own children are the social media generation. Like, they were born into social media and didn't know anything otherwise. And them and all of their friends are very aware of its harms and very working to try to mitigate them. You know, in some ways tempted by them, in some ways have succumbed to it, but in other ways fighting it very hard. So that they grew up knowing nothing else, and yet they were able to be formed by others and themselves and by God to think hard about it. And I would hope for the same with the AI generation.
Yeah, I think it's a useful reading. It's a very old book, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, 1930. And the interesting thing with he imagined a future not dominated by digital machine, but by biochemistry, you know, and biochemistry helping to save the world, bring comfort to everyone, bring whatever leisure all the time. And when you're anxious, you take a piece of drug and you're okay and you're happy. And there's resistance to that. There's the hero, the savage, who flees that society of every risk is under control and my comfort is guaranteed. And he flees and he prefers to risk the uncertainty of growing his own potato with the uncertainty of climate, but that's its own potato and he deserves to eat it. And he prefers that incomfort of uncertainty rather than the annihilating comfort of the control society. And I would make the parallel between this and Saint Antoine the Great, who flee, you know, the opulent city of Egypt into the desert and starting the monastic adventure in search, in quest for something which is great and just the material control of the world. So I would tend to think, for the best and the worst, that the human heart with its infinite desire will want to flee this future world supposedly controlled by machine. He would not resign to that world. And actually in Antiqua Nova, Pope Francis quoted Georges Bernanos, a French writer, who said the worst we should fear is not that there are machines everywhere, but that the desire of the human being is getting limited to what the machines offer. That's the worst, but I think it will not happen because I think the desire of the human heart is infinite, created in the imitation of God, and that we will have savages fleeing that control society with machines.
19 years ago, when I was a professor, young professor, we read a book that had an articulation of digital immigrants versus digital natives. And it was talking about a very similar kind of thing, largely with the development of phones and digital technology. And now we're 20 years past that. And I think we tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short term and underestimate the effects of technology in the long. And so it's going to take courage to think about, and I think real moral courage to think, and prudential ideas to think about how will that generation look, knowing largely we're going to be wrong. We're not going to be fully prophetic. So very good question to be thinking about as you help plan in your world what technology would look like. We have time for one more question. Yes, sir.
Hi, Father Christian Saenz here, also from the House and the Faculty of History at the Pontifical Gregorian University. I got more kind of a comment, but I guess it could turn into a question, at least for a reaction. And it seems that the variable for tolerating an AI-driven service becomes the human factor. Certain jobs are going to need a human. And we kind of mentioned it, in the healthcare and whatnot. But it seems also our tolerance for this changes according to the progress of technology. And I'm thinking, for example, we're getting used now to automated driving or self-driving cars. When I was a kid, I remember in the 1980s, we had an automated train system in downtown Miami, where I'm from. And at the beginning, I remember was a little bit nervous. Nothing runs a train. You go in there and the train was automatic. People get a little nervous, who's driving this? Now we don't think twice about walking into one of these trains at an airport and whatnot. We're having the same kind of reaction with the self-driving cars. We want a person at the wheel. Might we feel the same thing about a self-flying airplane in the future, crossing the Atlantic with no pilot? I don't know. It seems that as we start to delineate the factors that are irreplaceable for a human, that we really essentially need for a human operator, sometimes it starts getting reduced to a minimum. What is that minimum of humanity that we need? And some of those factors were kind of listed in there. Might be that at the end we end up reducing humanity's ability to err or not be perfect. And we don't desire the perfect machine, but sometimes an imperfection in it. I don't know. I mean, it seems to be somewhere where it's leading to. I don't know. Am I being too negative?
Did you have a question? Is there a very specific question, or is?
Yeah. Where's the limit? I mean,
where's the limit?
Yeah. What becomes the human minimum?
Yep.
One of our the readings that we got exposed to is a document called AI is Normal. Is that the title? Mm-hmm. Yeah, AI is as normal. And one of the points in the paper is that yes, human jobs will be displaced, but there will be jobs created to control AI, for example. So it's hard to predict, hard to say that humans' role will go away more and more, and it'll be very narrow. The Industrial Revolution reduced a lot of jobs, especially agricultural jobs, but we're still working. So my personal opinion is it's just, to Dan's point, it's hard to predict what's going to happen 5 years from now. But yeah, I'm optimistic there'll be many roles still for humans.
All right, please thank this panel.